Yes.
All right. So, what I'd like to do tonight, after a host of really weird technical issues, is introduce Adam Fields. Adam is the founder and creator of Midnight27 Studios, and you should really check out his work. He's on Facebook. He's got a website. He produces comic books, and we'll dive right into Adam and his career. Adam, how are you this evening, bud?
I am good now that the weather's calmed down. I am a lot better. I was kind of nervous we weren't going to have power.
Right. It was crazy out there earlier, wasn't it? Just like,
Yes, yeah, we up northeast Ohio, we have been hit with a lot of wind today. I watched some fascia get blown off our neighbor's house, a bunch
hmm.
of trees fall. So luckily, nothing in our yard, and seems like everything's died down. So we are
Gotcha.
in the clear, I think.
So, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got started as an illustrator.
Yeah. Yeah, so I actually have to go all the way back to almost the beginning. When I was 3 years old, my dad and mom had actually went to my dad's uncle's house, and somehow I ended up sitting down at an old school wooden desk, and he actually had drove a steam engine in perspective. I was 3 years old. I still remember it to
Mm.
this day, and it blew my mind. So ever since then, like it to a 3 year old, that's magic. Like you just drew a train in front of me, and it looked so real. At least in my 3 year old mind, it did, and it was just amazing. So ever since then, I was trying to figure out how to do that. So all through high school, I took art classes, and I was always that kid that was in the corner drawing. Anytime I went to my grandma's house, I had my briefcase, yes, briefcase with paper, an electric pencil sharpener. I took everywhere because it was the best pencil sharpener, and that's all I ever wanted to do. So after that, I went to MVCTC, Miami Valley Career Technology Center, for graphic design because that was all I ever was told. Drawing can't be a career. You have to do graphic design, or you have to work for Disney. There's no in between. So I said, well, I'm just going to go work for do graphic design. Obviously, I'm never going to work for Disney. I get that, but CTC opened up a whole bunch of new doors. They taught us some really important programs. Then at the School of Advertising Art, which is now called the Modern, that's where they really fine tuned us, not only with the programs, but also how to interact with customers. They put us in a lot of real case scenarios. They treated us as if we were professionals and they were the clients, which I really liked. But they also did that the hand holding. They were really good about switching roles, I felt. So that really gave us some real world scenarios. And then after that, I worked at a factory, and
Yeah.
that's where I thought my career was going to end because I knew this place was they promoted within a lot, and I knew that there was a marketing department. So I finally made it after 5 years. I made it to the marketing department, and I worked there for another almost 5 years. And they told me that this is as far as I could really go. So that kind of broke my heart. There was no graphic design involved. It was just market research, and that was it. And they told me like they just didn't think I was capable of doing it. So this is something I've poured my soul into, my heart, every bit of my energy into creating. And to be told that I can't do it, even though I was kind of doing it and fixing mistakes that our marketing firm was making, it just didn't sit right with me. So my wife and I had talked. I said, "Look, I want to really pursue this," and I did. Well, at the time, I was working on a comic book on the side just for fun. I still had that itch to illustrate, and so I was, you know, a very stressful job, a lot of pressure. I was the only one in my role doing this, and I was juggling big customers. So I'm like, I needed an outlet. So I went back to drawing. Well, people got interested in my story and what I was doing, so I talked to a local comic book shop that had been there for about a year, and they invited me out to their comic um, convention that they hold, and it just kind of blew up from there. And then that's when I realized, after talking to a bunch of these people, that I can make this a career. So I switched my whole business plan from doing branding and advertising and logos and all this to illustrating and sort of diving into what is the comic book industry? What does it look like, and how can I really grasp it? And it's not much different than any type of marketing job because essentially all we're doing is selling a brand just in the form of a comic book. If you ever think of Batman or Spider-Man, those are brands. They're not just characters because those logos are everywhere. They sell movies, they sell backpacks, T-shirts, action figures, you name it. They slap their logo on it. Star Wars is probably one of the biggest ones out there that
Right.
will put they don't care. They will put their logo and their characters on anything. So it wasn't that big of a stretch. And once I got that mindset that this isn't like gallery art, I'm not creating these things to look pretty. I'm trying to sell a product or essentially a brand. And
Right.
so far, 8 years later, I'm still doing it. So it seems to be kind of working.
Interesting. And so, just for full disclosure, Adam was one of my students when I was teaching at the School of Advertising Art.
Yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of
You
rough.
saw me in my very early stage.
No, it was cool. I was kind of a douchebag back in those days, and it's all right though.
No,
So
actually, I was telling my wife about your class. I said, he was probably one of the most realist teachers we had, and I learned a lot. Not just about the web development and everything, but like how to sort of forecast what's coming and
right.
kind of get a more of an insight of like, okay, this is where we're at now, but how can this be? What is this going to be taking us in the industry? So yeah, I learned a lot from your class.
I appreciate that.
We had a
Yeah,
lot of
and
fun.
just again, full disclosure, I taught web dev at what is used to be called the School of Advertising Art. It's now the Modern College of Design. They're doing
Yes.
excellent work. They're doing excellent there. Really great curriculum. Produced some really great students out of there. I was blessed to be able to be part of it. Didn't, you know, things didn't go so well, but that's okay. I was going through some things in my life at the time. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was about, now I will say this just for on a side note, I had warned everybody that mobile was going to take off.
You did.
I held up the phone and said the screens may be the size of a postage stamp today. And I'm not trying to, this is not out of hubris, but just for perspective's sake, so people can understand the journey and how we got here and what goes into these
Yeah.
sorts of things. And so, I held up to my little mobile phone with a little postage stamp screen and said, this is today's screen. Tomorrow's screen is going to be, you're going to be holding a TV in your pocket. It's going to be a TV in your pocket, basically. The
I
other thing
actually,
was, yeah.
I
And
was gonna say, I just told my wife that story. Literally, I said, "This is the guy that told me that."
and what's fun, I appreciate that. It's flattering. The other thing is that I did try to get some students there to do an independent comic. I don't know if you remember me trying to. It was an
I
independent
vaguely
comic,
remember that.
and at the time, Adobe Flash. It was Macromedia at the time. Flash
Yeah.
was really big, and I was trying to get them to do an independent comic, or basically a motion comic, and a 2D Flash game. And
Hmm.
just they all felt like at that, oh, we're just nerds. Nobody's gonna think about that. Like, oh, we're nerds. So
Right.
nobody's gonna be into comic books. Nobody's gonna be into superheroes.
Little did we know that that year is when Iron Man hit theaters, and
Yeah,
that's the whole forecasting thing. You got to look at it.
yeah, you got to see
Yeah.
ahead. And I will say this: I'm not your most devout Christian, but I do believe it's all from God. It's all divinely oriented. That sort of,
Yes.
my mom had that sort of divination, and it all comes from above. It all comes from God. So shout out
Yep.
to the creator, whether you believe him or not. That's
Absolutely. Yeah. You got
shout
to
out.
have that. My wife's got that spirit of discernment, and she
Yeah,
normally is
strong.
right on the head, and I get blinded. Like, no, I think you're a little off on this one. She's always right. I'm like, I'm just gonna start listening to you because
That's
my
because she's
compass
the
is
wife.
skewed.
She's
Yes,
always going to be white, right? She's the wife. That's just how. That's the rules. Them's the
that
rules,
is
son.
that is.
So,
Uh,
what are your biggest inspirations? What really drives you? What's the
so when I first started, and inspiration seems to go through phases. When I first got started, my inspiration was just to get my foot in the door, get artwork out there, and just see what I can do. So my very first show was awesome. We made $50 and we went out to eat, and it was just such an amazing time. We were like on top of the world. I'm like, we made $50.
All right.
That was awesome. And it's never about the money, but to me, like that first 50 at a show that I had, this was my very first time ever setting up. That was like, okay. So I did 23 shows the following year after that one.
All right.
And they, I was inspired by, getting in front of people because I knew in this type of field, you have to put yourself out there. There's no, job postings for comic books or whatever. You have to put yourself out there, especially if you have a unique story. So my motivation in the beginning was I got to get my name out there. But I ultimately wanted to learn and grow. And now that I've been 8 years into this and, just knocking on a decade's door, I'm like, okay, I want to try to inspire other people. I've got my own fan base and I'm continually growing it. I want to do that, but my ultimate drive is to inspire. And these people that feel like they're stuck in a 9 to 5 job that they hate and don't like it, if they're willing to grind, they're willing to, make something of themselves. So right now, my inspiration is just to inspire with the stories that I have, the artwork that I put out, or, if you need tips as tricks, even if they don't purchase anything from me, if just, hey, here's how you set up your taxes for being an artist, because that's info
Wow.
that's not out there. Like here's the easiest way. So, stuff like that. That's what really inspires me is to see other people thrive because I'm a firm believer that, all what is it? Rising water, raises all ships or something like that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I can help lift other people, I know I'm going up too. So
Yeah.
there's no reason to gatekeep any of this.
Now, what's interesting when you mention that first 50, that was the most important 50. That was a heavy 50, wasn't it? It was just
It really
it's not
was.
about the amount, but it's just the fact that you, having come from what a really crappy job, that was
Hmm.
real money. That was probably
It
the real
was.
money you ever earned because it was money that you made that a boss didn't have a company check on it. Your
Nope.
name was associated with that earn, and
Exactly.
that's the satisfaction of the entrepreneur spirit. So for folks who are on that precipice, which Adam is encouraging you, you,
Hmm.
the, you you're going to have to get yourself out there, and that feeling of what that day when you get that first check, even if it's a small check, it's going to click. Hey, a boss didn't write this check to me. There's no other company. I'm the one. This is me, and it becomes real. There's a certain
It
reality that
does.
hits you as an entrepreneur. That's awesome.
And yeah, and there's always times where it's like, okay, where's the next one? If you're coming up on the end of a project, my the way I operate is I like to try to book myself with little slots. Like, okay, I'm wrapping up a project now. I need to have something else lined up, which I've been very blessed that it's worked out. But I've slowed down. Last year, we moved across the state, and I had to put a pause on everything. So now I feel like I'm slowly starting to get more momentum back. I already have another book lined up that I have to illustrate. I just wrapped up two just this year
Wow.
already, on top of, well, three if you count mine. Um, but it's, that's the way that it has to be. If you're a solo act like me that has no marketing firm, nobody, sort of pitching in, no moderators or anything, you have to be the marketer and you also have to be the producer. So when I'm producing, I'm getting things done, but then I
Interesting.
know I have to take some time to talk to customers, get out there. If a job offer comes through, for Upper Deck, that's one of the bigger companies that I work for on trading cards. I'll tend to look at it and be like, all right, I don't have anything lined up. Yes, I can take this set, or no, guys, I'm a little busy. Send me the next set. And having those working relationships is very, very critical in this type of role.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
you mentioned the hats. That's what they call. You got to wear the
Hmm.
producer hat. You got to wear the manager hat, customer
Yep.
service hat. And that's entrepreneurship for you. That's
It
part of it.
is.
But
It
that's the
is.
thing for the entrepreneur spirit. And I wanted to go back to that again. That amount of check, that's so important because for the entrepreneur spirit, that they're looking for the challenge more than the reward, right? They're
Yep.
not really counting the pennies. They could be.
Mm-mm.
That's the whole thing about somebody with a true entrepreneur spirit. They can be broke and not know where that next meal is going to come from, but that feeds them. They're able to actually
Hmm.
push through that, and that's what makes them different than somebody who just, nothing against people who work for the man or the system.
Yeah, yeah.
You dang
Nothing
chumps.
against that. You know,
You
my
dang
wife,
chumps.
she's
I'm just
yeah,
joking.
right. No, my wife's that type. She likes to know that every 2 weeks she gets that paycheck.
Yeah.
But her drive isn't necessarily like mine. Hers
Right.
is she likes to take people care of people with food. She
Right.
likes to serve them in that aspect. So she doesn't have that desire to, you know, create her own stuff. Now her hobby is gardening and she likes to see, basically a physical see what reward she can get from her hard work in the soil and in the seeds, but her career, she is fully driven by I want to take care of this people and also know I have a paycheck coming.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, all right, wrapping up a project. Uh, Here's what I want to do for myself. This is what I got. Here's the events that I got coming. Okay, but I also got these to ship. Like it's a lot to juggle, but I know having worked multiple really crappy jobs and having broken promises of promotions and stuff, I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's how can I also like I hired one of my buddies. He's helping me color Prowl right now.
Okay.
So knowing like okay, I'm helping him in his journey with monetary.
Right.
I'm not worried about benefit, making a profit off of the Kickstarter. I know my profit is going to come later because I'm always going to be able to sell these books. It's my book.
Right.
But knowing he's getting, his pay and he has projects lined up, I'm like, all right, so he's getting a start and I'm helping him. Like that's a great feeling for me. And my family's not going hungry because of it. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a really great feeling. That's my reward.
Well, congratulations on your Kickstarter, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Basically, you've exceeded your goal, and so congratulations on that. And by
Thank
the way,
you.
that's there's an ulterior motive in that. Congratulations, because I am. I'm going to see if you'd be willing to help with with the Blasternal Kickstarter.
Absolutely.
So that we'll talk more about that in phase
Oh
two.
yeah.
There's an ulterior motive there. And by the way, yeah, let's talk about we'll add this to the topic of conversation in terms of the marriage,
Yeah.
right? Um, what does it take for your wife to understand her husband's, your career? How does that look? What's the
So this this is probably the first year that I feel like what I wanted to set out to do for not just her and I, but for the family, is actually coming to fruition. Um, when it first got started, it was basically like, okay, well, I hope this works. She was really hesitant, but also in that hesitancy, she was a lot. She was really encouraging. She's never once been that doubting person. She's
mm,
anytime I'm on the ledge, about ready to jump, she goes, "Come back here.
mm,
You got this. You didn't come this far. God hasn't blessed you this much to leave you. This is just a hurdle." Like she sort of talks me off that edge. She always thinks that she's saying the wrong thing when really she's saying the right thing. I just have to process it and I have to let it marinate a little bit. Now, but this year was the first year that an event actually gave my family and I an actual vacation. I've always loved going to these Comic Cons. She doesn't mind going to them. I'm an extrovert. She's an introvert, but she
mm,
can put on that hat and talk to these people. Some people are really good to talk to. Others are, they kind of drone on, and sometimes, it's just not the best conversations. And she knows a little bit about what I've got going on, but she doesn't know everything. So, books that I've worked on, she can't really talk to those except about mine because she knows all about mine, but she doesn't know all the other books. So it's hard for her to sell that kind of stuff. But we kind of now have roles at cons. If I'm talking to someone, she strikes up a conversation. If they just want like a print or something, she can handle that. Anytime someone is, paying, she's the one that handles the money. I don't touch the green stuff if she's there.
mm.
I'm just there to talk and sign and just, I guess, look pretty. She now is, unable to go to a lot more events, so it's been a lot on me. But we did a new event down in the Cincinnati area, um, and it was actually at the Great Wolf Lodge. So it was kind of a spur of the moment. I saw an ad, and I'm like, hey, here's a festival that's coming. They're looking for vendors. I have a subject matter that fits right into the theme of this convention or this festival. What would you say if our family went down? I did the festival and we just enjoyed the Great Wolf Lodge.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, let's do that. She needed a vacation anyway. And it worked. I mean, I went down there. I did the festival. We enjoyed the slides, water park, everything on Friday. I did the festival on Saturday. Well, my family enjoyed the park. They came and visited with me for a little bit and then went back and enjoyed it. And then Sunday we were able to spend all day there. So to
Mm.
me, like that was the relationship that I wanted to bring because I didn't want this job to rip me away from my family every Saturday, every Sunday, every Friday, and me just be that absent dad. I want my kids and my family involved with this as much as possible because I tell the story everywhere I go, and it truly scared me. And that's sort of another goes back to what motivates me. This is my one of my biggest motivations was I worked on the factory floor with this woman who was I wouldn't say she was miserable, but she you could just tell she was grouchy all the time. She hated her job. She hated everything. She would nitpick about everything, and you could just tell she had been in this job for too long. She must have had other ambitions that never planned out, and she was stuck. I get that, that happens to a lot of people. Well, after I was out of this job, I remember reading a story like someone posting like, "Hey, congratulations you on your retirement." Like, good, she's retiring now. She can enjoy life. 2 weeks later, she passed away.
Ooh.
I, and that like I had already been doing my job full time for about a year and a half at that point,
Mm.
and that scared me because I'm like I couldn't imagine. I knew what she was like working with her, and I was like I never wanted to be that bitter guy
Mm.
that everyone was like, well, don't make him mad or don't do this. Don't it kind of like it broke my heart. I'm like, even though she made my job miserable working with her, it's still like sad to me that she didn't get to enjoy the fruits of her labor.
Mm.
And I'm like, I want to at this young age of 36, I want my family to enjoy time together. I want to enjoy time with my kids and my wife. And if a con can take us to North Carolina or wherever, that's a vacation. We do the event, then we spend a couple extra days or even a week before or after enjoying the sights. And that's kind of what I look for in events. I took my son to Cleveland last month, and we were able to walk out and go see the lake afterwards because it was only 6 minutes away, and he'd
Right.
never seen Lake Erie before. So trying to use this not only to promote my stories, my job, and my artwork and everything, but also to give my family experiences that they never would have had otherwise.
Yeah, that's amazing that in terms of now, shout out to your wife,
Yeah.
Amy. That's a really amazing the fact that not only does she support you, but to be able to get involved. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a real blessing. That's the real magic of it. And when your
Yeah.
spouse believes in you, and that's a message to the spouses out there and the girlfriends out there of guys who
Yeah.
are struggling and trying. Be that anchor for him. Be that support for him because that's going to you can grow that. You can grow the business together. You can
Mm-hmm.
it can make it a part of your family as Adam has done. So that's really amazing. I'm really inspired by that.
Yeah,
So
she definitely is. I think more people like talking to her more than me now because she'll goof right back with them because we develop relationships with these people. It's not just like someone walking into a grocery store and just buying something and then walking out and maybe not hey, how are you? No, we try to be as genuine as we can with every single person that comes to our table because one, we don't know what their life's like. They may have spent their saved up as much money as they can just for this event.
all right.
They may be at shows every Saturday. We don't know. They could be going through something. So if we can be that little light or that little bit of encouragement or even
All right.
just something funny that they talk about later, that's it. That's what we strive for.
Okay. What's the story behind Midnight 27 Studios? What's the story there?
So when I first started, I was actually um, doing graphic design on the side while I was slowly trying to transition myself out of my current role because I always try to plan ahead and think like, okay, I can't just quit. I have to have a plan. So I started doing some shirt designs, and the only time I was able to do it was around midnight because my family would go to bed. I had to work in the morning, so I would do all my freelance work in the night hours, and I knew that I couldn't I couldn't at least at the time I didn't know I could brand myself with my name. So my LLC, I needed some sort of name, and I'm like, all right, I know I want studios in there because I'm creating artwork, but Midnight Studios, that sounds cool because I'm working at midnight. But what else could that mean? But that name was already out there. So 27 has always been my number. When I was a demolition derby driver, it's 127. My birthday is January 27th, so 27 is just like Midnight 27. I guarantee that's not taken, and it wasn't, so I did. But now this whole story after I've been doing this, I'm like, midnight is actually that threshold between day or night and day. So if someone has an idea and they can't quite make that transition from writing or making a story just the story, I am that midnight factor that can turn it in, take it from words to pictures, and that's that transition part. So that's the story behind the midnight.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about faith, and I don't want to Bible thump anybody, but just if you'd like to, if it's too deep of a conversation, it's fine. But what role does faith play in your work, and how's it does it translate into your work at all? Does it guide
It,
you in certain places? So
it is everything in my work. When people work with me, I even before like live streams like this, anytime I'm starting a new project, the first thing I do is say thank you, Lord, for a job. I always pray before live streams that I don't say the wrong thing. Anything that I say, I hope it's encouraging for somebody. A message. If I have to say something that makes absolutely no sense to me, I know it's for somebody that's going to hear it either today, tomorrow, next week, next year. At some point, someone's going to need that message. I might even need the message in the future. I don't know. But I literally pray about everything I do, and I try to have his light in every single aspect. So even though my comic book is about a vigilante werewolf, the whole plot is about hatred and bitterness and what that can do to you on the inside and how you need to get rid of that. That is
hmm.
the core of the story. So the werewolf and the characters that are there are just characters, but the overall theme is hatred and how can that ruin you from the inside out.
Well, what
So I'm trying to show people a little bit of Christ in everything.
I see. But the idea is, and this hopefully this isn't too jeering of a question, but would somebody be able to find that, do you think, if they were to see your work? And that's okay if they don't, but if would it be obvious that that came from a place of
You know, I'm I've always been that kind of guy that, one, whenever I was actually a youth leader for a while. So everyone that knows me, I have, Saved by Grace tattooed on my arm. So everyone knows what I do. I actually have firm stances on artwork that I will and will not do. Like I don't draw nudity and stuff like that. Everyone knows
yeah,
that. And that's taken years of kind of being belittled by other people that's saying, "Oh, you're missing money on the table if you're not doing this." I even
mhm,
had a publisher say, "Hey, you just draw it. We'll doctor it up later." Like that still doesn't matter because that's no
absolutely.
one's going to know that. Everyone's going to think, well, why would Adam draw this, even though I didn't? So it's taken a lot of time to have that firm hammer. So I think when people read anything that I've wrote, not just illustrated, but that I've created with my own hands, because there are other artwork, books that I've had to illustrate for other people that, it's their story. I can't really have that
Right.
kind of manipulation on it. And I have to stick to their script. But when it's something that I've created, I think they're going to know that there's going to be some sort of positive message somewhere within that. So they might be looking for it. And even if they don't, there's, I think back to like Evanescence, the band. Nobody knew that was a Christian song, and those were actual Bible verses she was singing from
Right.
Psalms. And everyone was playing this hard rock music. And I'm like, did you know that those are actual verses?
Right.
So it's kind of sneaking it in and showing people like you can be a Christian, you could be a follower. I don't ever say I'm religious because religion divides people, but
Right.
I will continue to shine light and be a positive beacon for anybody anywhere when needed. And even if it is just through a silly werewolf comic book, like there's going to be hints in there and it's going to be real stuff that people go through and how they overcome it. And, yeah, there is going to be, verses and stuff probably here and there, but overall, I'm hoping people will be, kind of open eyed, like, oh, I didn't know I could be a follower and like still like this stuff.
Right.
Absolutely. As
Yeah.
long as you're, holding up his, promises and not like being a jerk to people, you're fine.
I like what you said about Evanescence, where it's kind of, it's there, but it's not. It's not so much subterfuge. You're not trying to necessarily bury it or hide it, but you do it in a way where it's so artistic, but then the message is still there. So people can either tune into it, and maybe those people who are kind of have a certain sort of anointment or ordainment will see it, but then people can just enjoy it. Hey, it's a vigilante werewolf, and really
Yeah.
just enjoy it at the surface level. So I get it.
That's,
I get it.
yeah, that's ultimately my goal is I want to show people like because when people hear the word Christian or if they hear anything about church, there is a very vivid picture, and sadly, it's always somebody that's done them harm,
Right.
whether it be emotionally, physically, mentally, someone that has said something and criticized them, and I'm trying to reform their thought of what they think a Christian looks like. Because if they actually took the time and read about, the accounts of Jesus and what he did, they're going to realize he wasn't that hippie that was walking around all peaceful like they say. He was actually kind of hardcore. He
Right.
flipped tables because people were not doing what they were supposed to. He was not afraid to just say the truth. And if somebody told him, I don't believe you, he goes, all right. And then just and that's the type of attitude that I would love to have is when somebody is ridiculing me, I can just brush it off and be like, well, that's your opinion. I guess go for it. And then just leave it there. I mean,
Mm.
he hung out with the worst of people and was ridiculed by the righteous people. And he goes, I'm just here, man. Like they're the ones that need me. You
Right.
obviously don't. And well, I always like to see myself as David in the lion's den. I'm always
Mm.
surrounded by very, very opinionated people, and they've never intimidated me, and I've never had them ever confront me and ridicule me because I'm not pushing myself onto them or making them feel guilty. I'm just loving them the way they are, and that's what we're called to do.
Mm. Exciting. That's exciting. Hey, let's consider this part one of the interview, the more personal
Yeah,
insight stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and announce like a part two here of the interview. If you've still got
perfect.
stamina, we can go ahead and move into it. And this is
Oh
more
yeah,
about
I'm good.
the selfish part of the. I always do the interview part first, and then the
Yeah,
selfish part when it relates to Blasternal, the game, and so on and so forth. So we'll click.
do it.
I'm developing a game. I'll say we are developing a game called Blasternal. It's in its early conceptual phase right now. Adam's been instrumental in that process. The logo, which I think is absolutely brilliant, is Adam. He's also done some other iconography for me. I will apologize to you officially if you've seen the logo and that weird green, that weird green rays
The
behind it.
race, yeah.
Yeah, that's just a placeholder. I'm going to
Oh yeah.
recommission you to do like a full treatment for the
Okay.
logo. That's just kind of there for now. I just needed
Yeah.
something as a placeholder to get the social media up. So no, this isn't my
Yeah.
official apology to you for that because you probably almost puked on yourself when you saw
Nah.
it.
No, I knew I that looked like a placeholder, and I'm like, I know there's something bigger, and especially because I know the artwork's still being developed and
Yeah,
everything. So it's going to take time. Once you get the artwork fine tuned, then we
right.
can come up with the branding. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
understand the pacing.
well, what's interesting? Let me talk about the logo real quick since I'm on that.
Yeah.
So the challenge to Adam was that hey, those old school arcade games like Defender, and they had always had that Star Wars sort of
Yeah.
a vanishing point, sort of a forced perspective on the lettering. Pulled it right out, and I'm like, oh, this is. And
Yeah.
it took you what 4 or 5 tries, and it just knocked it right out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, wow, this is, and a lot of those things when we talk about faith and stuff, a lot of those things, when I first saw the model for one of so I hired a 3D modeler to do one of the main player characters. And when I saw the prototype of the character that I had described to him,
Hmm.
I literally began to tear up. I
Yes.
immediately said, I just said, thank you, God. This is amazing. And it was kind of corny, but I immediately started tearing up. It was just a video game, it's just just gonna be a
But it's your vision.
but yeah, just seeing somebody else. But it's the thing is seeing someone else interpret what I was thinking, and then see the coolness. I'm like, well, I guess it was cool after all. It wasn't just this corny idea I had.
Mhm.
So that was
I
it's
love
been a
it.
blessing working with you guys. So and
Likewise.
you've always had an amazing talent. I'm really glad to see that you've taken it for granted. You and several other students from
Mhm.
SA back really dove into your career as artists and graphical designers and so on and so forth. So I'm really appreciative of your talent coming on board the game. Let me ask
Thank
you,
you.
are you into video games at all?
So I will watch. I don't have a lot of time to actually play, but I
Mhm.
will watch people play them on YouTube. I am one of those guys,
Mm.
and I know it gets a lot of flack, but I'm like, look, it's no different than you watching someone else play football. Okay, it's no different. We're just watching someone that we're interested in play their game. My son, he loves playing video games. Like he's been playing Elder Ring and
Mm.
Valhalla. I think right now he's just going back and playing them. But growing up, yes, I was heavily into video games, which is why I remember when you said, the old arcades. I'm good friends with Daniel Pesina from Mortal Kombat. He played Scorpion Johnny Cage.
Oh
He was
wow.
actually Johnny Cage on the side of the cabinet on the
Wow.
Mortal Kombat, casing. So yeah, they were the motion capture. He was capture for that. His brother is Raiden, and I got to hang out with John Parrish, who played Jax, and the whole crew. They are cool people. So that is very nostalgic. When you said that, I'm like, I know exactly the theme,
Mm.
the feel, the colors, because those arcades are just so iconic, and they draw you in. So yeah, yeah, this is right up my alley.
So those are your favorite types of games, or what's your favorite types of?
So I growing up, my favorite was like Metal Gear Solid, and then Resident Evil, Silent Hill. Twisted Metal was a lot of fun. Just basically shoot 'em up type. Strategy games are always fun, where there's a mission and you have to get to it, but there's also a story.
Mm.
Because I always get involved, like dive deep into the story, the lore. I like to see twists and surprises and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And then in terms of the Blasternal, we haven't really talked that much about it, I don't think. I mean, I've told you a little bit about it, but
Bits and pieces. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, just what the idea from a design standpoint, and we can get into now. This is where we're getting the nitty gritty of it. Is when we start talking about where your skills apply to what the goal of the game is. I consider you part of the team. I consider you
Mhm.
part of the overall vision. And so that being said, the idea is to capture that old school sentiment of arcade games. Right now, obviously, and I'm going to get smacked in the face when people watch this. Oh, Link, people are doing that all the time. There are a million games out there that, especially in the shoot 'em up genre, or other ways to call
Yeah.
shmups. They used to call them shooters back in my day, but they call them shmups now.
Right.
I still call them shooters. Screw them.
Me too.
Anyway, anyway,
Schmups just sound like someone you call somebody
right.
that you don't like.
It's like it's a marginalized genre. It's like, okay, whatever. And yeah, there are a lot of absolutely, you can just fill a room with all the game titles that harken back to the old 8-bit and 16-bit arcade era. And since
Yeah.
I know that about the genre, that's kind of the entry point. The folks who play shmups appreciate that about the genre, is that there some of that. I mean, what made the genre what it is are that was that golden age of 16-bit,
Mhm.
because all of the other genres like platform games and eventually what became first person shooters, which are now
Yep.
just basically called action games, I guess if you want to call them that, or even third
Yeah.
person shooters like Fortnite, they all kind of owe themselves to things that emerged from that time when the shmup genre was the one pushing the envelope of all the graphics and so on and so forth, the hardware. And
Yep.
so, but from that though, the game itself is going to be very intense in terms of its visuals, in terms of I mean, if you pay attention to the story is going to be very intense and very deep, and the 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 gameplay is going to be very fast paced and very. It's not going to be what you think. It's going to be a traditional shooter, traditional shmup, but it's not going to be presented in the way that you might imagine. And that being said, well, what in terms of what would you like to see from the game in terms of, if as an illustrator, as a designer, if this were going to be part of your homework? I know I'm the main thought or creative behind it, but do you have any selfish ideas or thoughts, or any ideas that you would like to lend to it, you think?
I always bosses always come to mind when it comes to video games. Anytime that I play the game, I always look forward to what's the next level, what's the next big thing that I have to fight. Looking at Resident Evil, they had zombies everywhere. That's awesome. And then all of a sudden, you're introduced to the dogs. You're like, oh, that's different. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
this new creature comes running at you, and it's called a hunter. You're like, that is completely different. That's crazy. And they just evolved. Like then there was a snake, then there's a giant plant, then the final boss is this tyrant thing, and you're like, what is this? It just kept you excited. So I think your bosses need to be rememberable. They need to have some sort of impact, not
Yeah.
only on the story but on the player. Like they need to leave a mark for sure.
Yeah.
The characters themselves, obviously, they have to have some memorability to them, just because that's the whole point of the game. But I think having unique weapons, definitely bosses need to have a big focus, and just
Yep.
overall visuals. I mean, with today's technology and everything, I know, there's it almost looks like you're playing outside with the
Right.
technology, and
Right.
I'm cool with that. But there's something that he said about like 16-bit stuff. It's nostalgic, and there's a beauty in that, or even like the N64 graphics, for example. There's
Yeah.
just an elegance to those. But yeah, I just think bosses, I think, would be really cool to be have a big focus on.
Yeah, see, that's the thing in terms of our approach and how we're going to do bosses. And I don't want to spoil too much of the game.
Hmm.
I still want people to, when they play, to be surprised by things that they see and things that happen. But they're going to be very surprised by how we approach doing bosses in this game. It is, and I'm glad you said that. The game's so kind of the hint is the game's called Blasternal, right? It's kind of a gestalt of Blaster and Eternal. So it's like, okay, and then, like I said, the entry point for the game in terms of visuals, I want to be very traditional. I kind of wanted the cut screens to be like motion comics, like 2D motion
Yeah.
comics, and we'll talk about that here in a moment in terms of the talent that I'm going to be leading on you for moving
Hmm.
forward. But the idea is that the bosses are going to be. So I'll give you an example, and I can at least say this: you've got Dark Souls, right? Your son's playing
Yep.
Elden Ring, right?
Yep.
Um, there's something about that game which is so much different than other games and how they presented, if you want to say, bosses. Have you seen any of the boss encounters in that game?
I've watched him. I make fun of him every time he
Yeah,
dies.
right,
I mean,
right.
and
And
it's often.
yeah, and see, the thing is that what it did was it's an in at least today's vernacular, it brought back respect for a boss, right?
Hmm.
You, some games you knew the bosses at the end of the level, whatever. This thing's like, hey, there's a dragon roaming around here. Hey, there's a fire giant just hanging out on a hill somewhere, you know.
Yep.
And you've got to have the courage to run up and challenge these things. And these things are not they're no joke. They're not
No,
pushovers. You got to put the fear of God in these players. You've got to
you really do.
you got to hit them with something that's going to surprise the crap out of them. And so, in terms of when the reason I brought that up, I say that Blasternal is going to be kind of like the Elden Ring or the Dark Souls of shmups, right? And both in
Nice.
terms of how brutal the difficulty is going to be, how brutal the bosses are going to be, but then also, I hope to jump scare people. I hope
Yeah.
that I hope to goodness I will. The one thing I'm looking forward to the most is seeing somebody play this live on Twitch or YouTube and watch them crap their pants when a boss shows up, and just be so blown away by it. I'm like, yep, that's what I was hoping for. That's really what I was going for, and create that memorable moment of a boss that really made you respect it. It's like, okay, this is messed up. So, but
That's a good term, respect. I like that.
oh yeah, that's the key. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's one thing to fear it, but to respect the boss is like, oh, because
Yeah.
you got those cheesy bosses that'll come out and one shot you or like that. But a good boss should make you respect it, I think. So
Yeah. Where it's watching him play. He's been neck and neck with these boss. And then after a while, he almost gets it down, but then he ends up getting killed. He gets out, bested. So then he has to go actually try and level up and then try it again. He's like, okay, I know I can't go back there to fight him. I need to better myself
right.
before I pursue this, which that is amazing.
Well, let me say this. I can at least say this. This a little bit of a spoiler, but the idea in Blasternal in terms of gameplay. I'm going to go ahead and expose this. For anybody who happens to be watching, the interview, the blog, or whatever like that, you'll get this little inside hint. When you start the game, like so in Elden Ring, again, going back to that, at the end of that, by the time you get to the last 3 or 4 bosses, right, you're so buff, you're almost like a boss yourself. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
you're buffed out. Blasternal plays like you've already finished a game before, like you've already gotten to the end of it. You played all to, but then Blasternal kind of almost picks up like you finished another game, so you're buffed out at the beginning. You're
Hmm.
absolutely decked out. You are strong, fast. You've got formidable weapons. So it's almost as if it's a sequel. Kind of little hint there. It's almost as if it's a sequel or to another game where you had already buffed out, so that when you start, it's like, oh my gosh, this is this guy's he can tank some he can tank some hits. He's just guns really stupid powerful or whatever like that. And then the
Hmm.
immediate thought is, okay, well, if that's the case, is it going to be easy? Am I going to be able to walk it?
No. So if you're that buff, what's everybody else like?
And so
Uh,
the idea is this though, and this is the real key, Adam, is that unlike most games where you have to kind of buff your way through it, start as a pleb and fight your way up to the top to become a veritable demigod. And Blasternal, you kind of start a demigod. You get coming from? The idea though is, can you maintain it? That's the
yeah.
key. Can you maintain? And it's all about your reputation. You come into
Okay.
this game and the enemies are like, oh well, this is the mercenary. This is the legendary mercenary. Oh shit, he's on the scene, and they their behavior and stuff like that act as though, yeah, you've entered the scene. You're the boss of that particular situation. But then if you start playing crummy and you start, you die, you crash into things, you goof around, you don't have that courage or that chutzpah, they're going to call you out. You're going to lose your reputation, and that we'll just leave it at that. That's just the only
That's
hint I'm going to
awesome.
give at this point of what people can
That's a good
expect in
hint.
terms. Oh yeah, so it's different. So that's what's going to be different about it. You start the game buff. You start as if you just finished and beat the last boss of Elden Ring, but you're beginning Blasternal. And so yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of nasty crap in there to
That's
get you
cool.
back.
That's
Um,
cool.
but in terms of the design, so what I'm looking more in terms of your talent, again, more of the in terms of presentation and iconography. We haven't even gotten started on that really. Um, we've got another artist. His name is Chris Martin. Shout out to Chris
Hmm.
Martin. He's an anime artist. He's doing the penciling and line work, and then hopefully, well, he's doing the penciling. Hopefully, you'll be able to do some cleanup and coloring and so on and so forth
Yeah.
on it. And like I said, the idea is at some point to make the interstitials or the cut screens like motion graphics. So just keeping that in mind in terms of presentation. I'm going to need, we're going to need all of the social media has to be redone and all that stuff. So I'll be coming to you for
Yeah.
any of that kind of work. If you have the time, if you have
Oh yeah.
the time
Yeah.
and the bandwidth. I know you've got a lot going on.
Hey,
So
this is my job. I'm happy to help, especially with that. I know you had me, think when you said motion comics. I'm like, I know how to do, static pages, but never done a motion one before. So I'm actually going to look into because I know I can probably do it with the program I have on my iPad, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn
Oh, I
something
can.
new with this.
Oh, I can do it. I mean, if you give me the like, say you draw it out in Illustrator and export it from Illustrator, I would take it in After Effects, Adobe After Effects. That's what I know well. I mean,
Oh
I have
yeah,
Premiere and all that. I mean, not Premiere. I have what's the Apple one? Oh, Final Cut. I have Final access
Final
to
Cut
Final Cut.
Pro. Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah. See,
I'm more adept at. Go ahead.
I use Procreate for
Okay.
my illustration stuff,
Okay.
which I mean I can export into anything. And the best thing is I can actually export each layer
Right.
as needed. And I know it has an animation feature too. So if I needed to draw like something and like make it look like it was moving, I know it does that.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I think sending you layers and stuff, yeah, I know we can do that
Yeah. Yeah.
for
So,
sure.
all right. Is there anything else you want to say for the good of the cause? I really appreciate your time, sir.
Oh man, this was really fun. I
Oh
mean, it was good
yeah.
to catch up, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm real excited for Blasternal. I think this is going to be a really really big game changer when it comes to this
We'll
genre.
see. My prediction is this, and I'm going to do it. By the way, I'm going to do the best I can to produce the best game I can. So that's the number one thing.
Absolutely.
In terms of graphics, in terms of gameplay, I'm going to do my best. I think that people, I'm not trying to put negative out there, but I don't know if people are going to understand it. They're not going to necessarily. The light bulb isn't necessarily going to go off for most gamers.
Yeah.
They're gonna feel like it's definitely going to punish them, and they're going to wonder
Yes.
why is this game why is this game punishing me like this?
I
And
didn't
it's
do anything.
and so they may not get it, but I think what's going may happen is that someone's going to take like I hope to like you, I hope to maybe inspire somebody. The next there's going to be another studio that sees this game and says, I think I know what this guy was trying to do. And I think they might go ahead and take this new approach to doing shoot 'em ups, and then it kind of blossoms out from that because I don't know if people are going to. I mean, but I'd like to have the credit for. Well, I was the game behind the game, right?
Right.
I was the narcs to Mortal Kombat, right? Now, a lot of people aren't hip
Right.
to, they
Yep.
like Mortal Kombat and say, oh, it looked so realistic. But what about narcs? You guys weren't hip to
Yep.
narcs back in the day, when they were doing. Was that guy narcs though? The same actor?
No.
Okay, but
No.
you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah.
Yes. There's
So
always a predecessor. Yep.
right, right. And so that's the idea is that I think that I don't know if people are going to appreciate it. So I'm going to do the absolute best. So I can't say it's going to be a smash. If it becomes one, that's fine. I have a point to prove. Is really what it is. I'm sticking by my guns. People think I'm crazy. I got uh, I got beat up in Reddit one time. I made it started a topic, because I was saying that all the other game genres, Adam. If you take platform games, I mean, for goodness sakes, Super Mario Odyssey looks photoreal. I mean, it's freaking Mario, and he's walking
Yeah.
around photorealistically rendered buildings and what is it? What
Hmm.
is this? Sports games, obviously, racing games,
Yeah.
first-person shooters. All of them have benefited from the absolute best technology that modern modern technology can produce as far as graphics goes. But shmups are falling behind, and I think that a lot of indie studios, it's an easy genre to develop for. That's why I'm developing one because it's the easiest,
Yeah.
kind of genre they develop for. But it because indie studios are doing it, they're strapped on resources, time. They kind of have an idea, they want to get it out quickly, so I don't think they really put a lot of deep effort into the graphics so much, and I think that's
Hmm.
unfortunate. And so that's this glass ceiling I'm trying to break is an indie shmup doesn't have to look like an indie shmup. Maybe it can look, maybe not AAA, but maybe it will do some things that would surprise you in terms of
It'll
graphics.
look polished. Yep.
Yeah. And so I am going to be heavily focused on presentation is going to be a big part of it. But like I said, people have told me when I describe how the gameplay will work and so on and so forth, they think I'm crazy. And I'm like, I've got a point to prove because I tell you if you go to Steam right now, and this is why I started developing Blast Journal. If you go to Steam right now and look at the top 10 shmups, the last time I checked, most of them are occupied by Toho, what they call Toho or Tohu, Touhou. I don't know how you would pronounce
Yeah,
that.
Toho. Yep.
So shmups, and some of them are, little anime girls in pleated dresses barking in Japanese, and and I don't mean to sound racist when I say that like that. It's just
It's the
it's a
fact.
style. It's a style. Well, it's a style and a
The
genre that
style.
people
Yeah.
appreciate. Yeah, I'm 53 years old. I've got grandkids. I'm not playing that game.
Right.
Maybe it's stubborn. Maybe it's a prejudice. I have nothing against anybody. Hey, I'm glad that people are pushing the genre, and I
Mhm.
think, and I have nothing against it. And I think it's a clever. I'm not above maybe making one at some point. I think it's clever in its own way, but I'm looking for the genre to be pushed in new ways, in new directions. I'm like, I lived through the golden age of 16-bit shmups, right? I
Yep.
was there as uh, 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 they said in the Lord of the Rings movie. I was there
Uh,
3,000 years ago. Uh, and so I want to see it go in new directions. I want to see it really step up and maybe surpass. And the other thing is, last but not least, I want to steal from other genres because other genres have stolen from shmups. I don't care what anybody says. Elden Ring is a shmup. You might not think so. People who listening to this are like, oh, you're smoking crack, dude. But
no.
if you go back to old shmups and the bosses, tense situations, being pressured, having to work the playfield, that's a shmup all day, dude. But
Yeah.
there are certain games that actually literally have shmup. Like there's a game called Cuphead. It's a run and gun.
Yep.
Absolutely brilliant in terms of production. Absolutely
The
stunning.
artwork's beautiful.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
production design, just no question. But there are levels where you're literally playing as a shmup. Up, right, left, down, and
Mhm.
shooting, and that's a shmup. And it's like, okay, well, other genres are stealing from the shmup genre. I want the shmup genre to steal from other genres for a change, and that's what
Yeah.
Blasternal's, very much going to do. So I tell people, think Breed, which is a very esoteric, um, very well produced shmup by an indie studio, Edelweiss, and then cross that with an action game called Devil May Cry by Capcom, which
I
if you
love
play,
Devil May
oh
Cry.
yeah, yeah, if you play Devil May
Yeah.
Cry, it's easy to pick up. You just pick up and
Yeah.
start playing, and it's just instantly you're hacking and slashing and having a good time. And that's the arcadeness of Blasternal, is that it's going to be easy to pick up. You're not going to
Mhm.
sit there. I'm sorry, folks. This is where people are going to get mad at him. I'm not going
Ah,
to give you. You're not going to sit there on a menu for 12 minutes, half an hour, configuring your kit.
customizing.
Yeah, no, get
No,
out of
no.
here with that crap. Here's Ad Azimuth. He's a mercenary. Go fight.
Yep.
His ship
That's
comes in two tones, black and black. Okay.
that's it. I love it.
Go fly. Go 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 be a boss. So
That's right.
that's the idea behind it. And so that's enough of me pontificating on that. I really
I
appreciate you
like
coming
that.
aboard. I'm very, very flattered that you lent your talent and coming on board. Very proud. Again, I'm going to embarrass him. I say this to him all the time. Adam makes me so proud, not just because he was one of my, that's the bias, not just because he's one of my, but he's always on his craft. He's always on his grind. You gotta appreciate the man. He always puts that extra. It's part of him. It's his DNA, and you gotta love it. So you're gonna get
Thank
that
you.
pride from me every time, man. I'm always gonna be on Facebook rooting for you. So
I appreciate it. I truly do. Having cheerleaders in your corner always helps because we're always going to be our biggest critic. And I know you know
yeah.
that too from your own projects. It's like,
Oh yeah.
man, I know I could have done this better. I could have, but having those other people behind you going, nah, it's beautiful. Keep going.
Right.
It
Right.
it helps.
And I appreciate you joining me in this journey to create Blasternal. I really do.
I'm
So
honored.
looking forward to doing cool things and seeing where
Yeah.
this can go. So, with that said,
Awesome.
we'll go ahead and close out this interview. Adam, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Regards to your lovely wife, and you be blessed, sir. God bless you.
You
Take care.
too.
Have a nice evening.
Bye.